Hello, welcome to Obligations and Contracts. So, before we begin, we have to identify first the coverage of our topic or uh, what are the, the laws or the provisions that we are going to study in our subject. So, our subject is composed of two titles from Book 4 of the new Civil Code. It is Title 1 and 2 of Book 4, in which Book 4 is entitled Obligations and Contracts. But we will merely focus on Title 1 and Title 2 of this book because Book 4, if you would examine our Civil Code, is composed of different or several titles. Okay, so book 4 of the obligations and contracts is composed of several titles, and in our subjects we will only focus with title 1 regarding obligations and title 2 regarding contracts. Okay, yes, because as you can see there are other several titles under book 4, like title 3 natural obligations, title 4 estoppel, title 5 trust. Okay, so we will no longer include this in our discussions in this subject. Okay, so again, that would our coverage is only Title 1 and Title 2, Book 4 of the Civil Code. That is from Articles 1156 to Article 1422 of the Civil Code. Okay, so let's proceed with the first title, the obligations, and also Chapter 1, the general provisions under obligations. Okay, so first is we have to define what is an obligation. Under Article 1156, an obligation is a juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. Okay, again, a juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. So if you could uh, analyze this definition, um, there is that person who has the obligation to give, to do, or not to do. But as you can see, uh, that person, that or the definition focuses on that person who has an obligation to give, to do, or not to do, or the person who is called the the debtor or the obligor. The definition focuses on the debtor or the obligor. So there are several criticisms as to this definition because of that, because it does not include in the definition the person in whose favor the obligation to give, to do, or not to do is to be made. So they proposed a what they call a more complete definition of obligation, which is this: an obligation is a juridical relation whereby a person called a creditor may demand from another called the debtor the observance of a determinative conduct, which is the giving, doing, or not doing, and in case of breach may demand satisfaction from the assets of the latter. So as you can see in this so-called more complete definition, it also includes the creditor in whose favor the obligation to give, to do, or not to do is due, and the debtor. Okay, so But for purposes of our subject, the definition given under Article 1156 would be sufficient. But just remember, okay, that obligation does not merely focus on the person who has the obligation, but also to the person in whose favor the obligation is. Okay, so next is the elements of an obligation. Okay, so generally there are four elements of an obligation. So first is the active subject or the obligee or creditor. Okay, you have to remember these terms. Okay, this term is the obligee or creditor is technical, so you have to remember, because during our discussion, our further discussions, we will be using obligee or creditor, debtor uh, in the following or succeeding provisions. Okay, so you have to remember this so that you would not be confused as to in analyzing the provisions which we will discuss later on. Okay, so again, the first element of obligation is an active subject or the obligee or creditor. Okay, he is the possessor of a right. So kung may utang, okay, a contract of loan between two persons, the obligee or creditor is the one or is the person who was borrowed money, from whom the money was loaned. Okay, siya ang possessor ng right. The second element is the passive subject, the obligor or debtor. So siya naman yung nangutang. Okay, that the debtor is the person who loaned the money from the creditor. He who has the duty of giving, doing or not doing. Okay, so remember the terms. The obligee or creditor may be used interchangeably. Also for obligor and debtor, they may be used interchangeably. So they pwede lang either of the terms. Okay, third element is the object or prestation, which is the subject matter. It is the duty of giving, doing, or not doing. Okay, so it's the obligation. Ano ba yung obligation niya? For example, in a contract of loan, the obligation is to pay the amount loaned. In a contract of sale, the obligation of the buyer is to pay the purchase price of the thing sold, and also the obligation of the seller is to deliver to the buyer the thing sold. So that is the object or prestation. Fourth is the efficient cause. This is the reason why the obligation exists. Okay, but take note, as I have said, it is the general, as a general rule, this four is sufficient or complete the elements of an obligation. But there are certain cases in which form is also important, especially if we would already be under contracts. There are certain contracts which cannot be considered as valid if a certain form or certain requirement required by law is not complied with. Okay, that a contract would be invalidated. So that is why there are certain cases that form is also important. If we say form, it means that there is a requirement provided by law which must be complied with in order for a certain obligation or contract to be valid. That is the form. If the law says that for a certain contract to be valid, it must be written or it must be made in a public instrument, then that requirement should be followed. Otherwise, the contract or obligation would be invalid. Okay, so that is what we mean by form. Okay, so much for elements of obligation. Now let us go to the kinds of obligations. Okay, so there are different classifications or viewpoints from which we can classify or distinguish different types of obligations. Now, first is from the viewpoint of sanction, we have civil obligation, natural obligation, and moral obligation. So this civil obligation is that which is defined under Article 1156. Ito mismong top subject natin na under sa Title 1. That is what we refer as civil obligation. Okay? Yung topic natin mismo, this is what we call civil obligation. They are sanctioned by law and they are demandable from the person obliged. Okay? So, that is the civil obligation. For the natural obligation naman, okay, in essence, it is the duty not to recover what has voluntarily been paid, although payment was no longer required. So, just to picture this natural obligation, although this natural obligation is not included in our subject, but we need to at least know what is this natural obligation, even as a general term, in order for us to distinguish it from civil obligation. Okay, as you can see, or as we have already seen, natural obligation is already under Title 3 of Book 4, di ba? So it's our subject is only again from Title 1 and Title 2. Okay? So in order to distinguish it from civil obligation or determine civil obligation from natural obligation, we have to identify their distinctions. Okay, so if we say civil obligation, it is based on a positive law, right? For example, there is a law requiring the parents of a child to support their children. Okay? So from my law mismo na nag-oblige sa mga parents na mag-support sa kanilang mga anak. So therefore, that is a civil obligation because that obligation is based from a positive law. While ang natural obligation naman is based on equity and natural law. So it is not based on something that is written. Okay? It's more based on reason or justice or fair play. Okay? Or more on like conscience. Doon galing ang natural obligation. Walang law nagsasabi na ito ang obligation mo, pero alam mo sa sarili mo na you have to do it. You are obliged to do it. Okay, so that is a natural obligation. Okay, so another distinction is that in case of civil obligation, okay, the creditor has the right of action to compel the performance of that civil obligation. So pwede niya yung pwede siya mag-file ng action sa court para ipa-comply yung obligation. So for example, yung creditor, yung debtor hindi na niya binabayaran ang kanyang utang to the creditor. So si creditor nag-demand na siya, nag-send na siya ng demand letter, nagpunta na siya sa barangay, pero in all, it failed, and still the debtor did not pay his obligation. Then in that case, the creditor can now go to court, file an action in court in order to compel the debtor to pay his or her obligation to the creditor. So it can be compelled through court action, the civil obligation. While in natural obligation, because it is not based on positive law, but is merely based on equity, okay, then that natural obligation cannot be enforced by court action. Okay, but after voluntary fulfillment by the debtor or obligor, okay, they authorized the retention of what may have been delivered or rendered by reason thereof. Okay, so that is natural. Okay, so for let's say for example, let's give a specific example. Okay, so for example, may utang si debtor kay creditor. And then there is a law saying that, for example lang so let's suppose that there is a law saying that the loan amount or the debt may be recovered only within 4 years. Okay? Pwede lang niya pabayaran yung utang within 4 years from the date of the contract or the loan that has been executed. Okay? So kung mag-lapse na yung 4 years, then wala nang obligation si debtor to pay his debt. Because let's just suppose that supposedly lang na may ganun na law. Okay? So yung obligation ngayon ni debtor would become a natural obligation. And if his conscience makes him compels him to pay the creditor, then magbabayad talaga siya, binayaran niyang utang kahit nag-lapse na yung 4 years, and then the creditor can retain what has been paid to him. So hindi na pwedeng bawiin ni debtor kung ano man yung binayad niya kay creditor. Okay, it authorizes the creditor to retain what has been paid to him. Okay, but for example, hindi nagbayad si debtor after the lapse of 4 years, hindi na pwede kasi natural obligation na siya. Hindi na pwede si creditor na i-compel si debtor to pay the debt. Alright, so in essence, those are the distinctions of civil obligation and natural obligation. Now, for moral obligation, it's more on It's like obligation, like in the a religious obligation. Okay, like there is, for example, Catholics have the obligation or the moral obligation to go to church every Sunday, right? So more on, it's still not based on a positive law, not on equity, but more on uh, for example, religious or um, other sources aside from law and equity. Okay, that is moral obligation. Now let us proceed to another viewpoint, which is from the viewpoint of subject matter. We have real obligation and personal obligation. So if we have real obligation, that refers to the obligation to give. Diba? Under the definition of obligations, tatlo yon: juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. So three. Ang real obligation refers to the obligation to give. Tapos, yung personal obligation naman refers to the obligation to do or not to do. Okay, so from another viewpoint, from the affirmativeness and negativeness of the obligation, we have positive or affirmative obligation. That is the obligation to give or do or to do, while the negative obligation is the obligation not to do. And then from the viewpoint of persons obliged, we have unilateral, where only one of the parties is bound, and bilateral, where both parties are bound. So if we say unilateral, isa lang, kasi nga, di ba, may, if you remember the elements of obligation, di ba, we have creditor and debtor. So usually kasi in ordinary transaction, let's say for example a contract, which is one of the sources of our obligation, usually both are creditors and debtors of each other, right? For example, in a sale, because it's really is just a matter of viewpoint. Okay, for example, in a sale, the seller has an obligation to the buyer to deliver the property or the thing sold, while the buyer has the obligation to pay the purchase price of the property or thing sold. Okay, so that is ordinarily the case, right? The seller is a creditor with respect to the purchase price from the buyer, while the buyer is the debtor. Okay, but with respect to the thing sold, the seller is the debtor. He is obliged, he has the obligation to give the thing sold, and the buyer is the creditor. Okay, so if we say unilateral, only one of the parties. So let's say, for example, a donation. Okay, we have two parties, the donor and the donee. The donor has the obligation to give the property to be donated, while the donee is the creditor. But the donee has no obligation to the, okay, in a general of the donation, the donee has no obligation whatsoever to the donor. So in that case, the obligation is unilateral. And the other way around, bilateral, that example kanina sa sale, okay, both parties are bound. Okay, so that is four kinds of obligations. Okay, so now let us go to the sources of our civil obligations. Okay, so there are five sources of our civil obligations. We have from law, okay, the obligation, our civil obligation, or simply obligation, may arise from law, contracts, quasi-contracts, acts or omissions punished by law, or delicts, in short, delicts. And fifth is quasi-delicts. Okay, we will take this up one by one, but remember, under Navales versus Rias, 8 Phil 508, decided by the Supreme Court, an old case actually, this enumeration given under Article 1157 is exclusive. Okay, there are no other sources of our civil obligation. If it is a source other than this enumerated in Article 1157, then it is not a civil obligation. That is probably a natural obligation or a moral obligation. Okay, but according to, again, the Supreme Court, this enumeration is not scientific because in reality there are only two sources of obligation. Okay, if you will just analyze it, deeply analyze it, there are only two sources of obligations. That is the law and contracts. Because these obligations arising from quasi-contracts, delicts, acts or omissions punished by law, and quasi-delicts are in reality imposed by law. Okay, so for example, sa delicts, di ba? Sa delicts, if we say that a person who has committed murder would be civilly liable to uh, the family of the victim, then if we take a look at this from the viewpoint of this Article 1157, that civil liability apparently arises from this acts or omissions punished by law. But also, it is that that obligation, because it is provided by law, is also from the law. It arises from the law. Okay, but I think it is for convenience, or for the purpose of conveniently determining from what source the obligation came from, then that is why we have these five sources of obligations instead of just two. Okay, so that we can easily identify from what source did that obligation come from. Okay. Okay, so let us proceed to the first, those obligations arising from law. Okay, obligation under Article 1158, obligations derived from law are not presumed. Only those expressly determined in this code or in special laws are demandable and shall be regulated by the precepts of the law which establishes them, and as to what has not been foreseen by the provisions of this book, okay, they are not presumed. When the law says obligations derived from law are not presumed, this merely means that the obligation must be clearly set forth in the law. So if there is no law saying that a person has an obligation to do this, to give this, or not to do this, then there is no obligation to speak of. Okay, so the obligation must not be presumed. It must be clearly set forth in the law. Okay, there must be a law which says so. Right? For example, these obligations derived from law. Yung example natin kanina, obligations of the parents to support their children. They are in fact provided in our family code. Okay, that the parents has to support their children. They have to give them, support them in their obligations, basic necessities like food, okay, dwelling, all right. And another example is obligation of the citizens of the Philippines to pay their taxes. So that is provided under our tax laws, the train law, the NIRC. Okay, so it means that if there is no law saying so that we should, the citizens of the Philippines must pay taxes, then there is no obligation to pay those taxes. Okay, under this Article 1158. But because there is a law such as the NIRC in our train law, which provides that the citizens of the Philippines must pay taxes, then we are obliged under those law to pay taxes. Okay, so that is for obligations arising from law. Now, for obligations arising from contracts, under Article 1159, obligations arising from contracts have the force of law between the contracting parties and should be complied with in good faith. Okay, so the obligations arising from the contracts, although they are not law or they are not laws, the contract is not definitely is not a law, or the provisions of that contract are not laws, but according to this Article 1159, they have the force of law. Okay, so that is why it may be enforced under through court action in the court. So kung may hindi nagbabayad ng utang, pwede siya makasuhan in court to compel him or her to pay his loaned amount, his or her obligation. Okay, so and Article 1159 reminds the people that the provisions or the obligations arising from that contract must be complied with in good faith. Okay, so contracts are not superior to law. Their terms and conditions must not be contrary to law, morals, good customs, public policy, or public order. Although they have the force of law, the contracts are not superior to law. Okay, they must abide, the provisions in that contracts must abide with the law. So if the provisions therein, the contracts or the obligations are contrary to law, then that contract or the provision which is contrary to law is invalid. Okay, so because under Article 1159 reminds the contracting parties to comply in good faith the obligations arising from the contract, okay, neither party may unilaterally and upon his own exclusive volition escape his obligations under the contract unless the other party assented thereto, or unless for sufficient causes sufficient and law and pronounced adequate by a competent tribunal. Okay, so hindi pwede na pumasok ka sa contract and then later on if you realize that you are in a bad bargain in entering that contract, you would just forget about the contract. You will forget about your obligations under that contract. So, hindi pwede yan. Kasi nalaman mo lang na lugi ka sa contract, atras ka na sa contract. So, hindi pwede. Kung nakapasok ka na sa contract na yan, you must comply your obligations therein in good faith even if you think that you are in a bad bargain. Or unless na lang na pumayag yung other contracting party na i-cancel na lang yung contract, or there are really causes or valid grounds to which the court can invalidate the contract. That is the only way. But if there is none, or the other contracting parties does not agree to the cancellation of the contract, then you must really comply with your obligations therein. Okay, so that is for Article 1159 regarding obligations arising from contracts. Now, obligations arising from quasi-contracts naman. So, if we say from the term quasi, it means it's like contracts but it's different. Okay. If we have contracts, we have also quasi-contracts. So what is this quasi-contract? Okay, from the definition, although quasi-contracts is already under Title 17, not totally not included in our subject, but we will just discuss the general concept of what is a quasi-contract, since even if it is not included, okay, still it remains that obligations arising from this quasi-contracts are civil obligations, which is still under Title 1. Okay, so quasi-contract is that juridical relation resulting from a lawful, voluntary, and unilateral act in which has for its purpose the payment of indemnity to the end that no one shall be unjustly enriched or benefited at the expense of another. So this quasi-contract is imposed. Okay, the purpose of this quasi-contract or why is it nga nandito to is that so that no person will be unjustly enriched or benefited at the expense of another. Yan yung evil na kanyang piniprevent. Hindi dapat magka-unjustly enrich or yung isang tao at the expense of another. Okay? So let's take certain specific quasi-contracts that we have identified. Okay, we have the negotiorum gestio and dissolutio indebiti. Okay, so first is negotiorum gestio. This takes place when a person voluntarily takes charge of another's abandoned business or property without the owner's authority. Reimbursement must be made to the gestor for necessary and useful expenses as a rule. Say for example, may si A yung owner ng business. Okay? Tapos because of certain financial problems or social problems is facing, A abandoned his business. Goes to another town or municipality or province in order to escape his problems. Okay, but here comes B. Okay, and B thinks that it would be it would be a waste to just abandon the business of A because he thinks that it is still profitable. So without the knowledge and consent of A, B assumes the management of the the business of A. Okay? So walang consent of ni A, nag-take charge si B. And of course, because siya ang nag-take charge, si B ang takes charge, then B has to pay certain expenses for the operation of the business. Okay, and as it is, indeed, the business has profited, and later on, A returns to the place of the business and sees that the business uh, is still thriving. His business is still thriving because of the management of B. So A returns because indeed B recognizes that A is indeed the owner, the lawful owner of the business. Then he turns over to A the income that has been acquired during A's abandonment. So A is now enriched, but the expenses made by that profits in order to gain those profits were made by B. So it would be unfair if A will not reimburse B for B's expenses. Okay, so A would be unjustly enriched by that because nag-abandon lang siya and then pabalik niya may income pa rin siya. So it would be unjust enrichment on the part of A. So in order to prevent that, a quasi-contract of negotiorum gestio will be imposed by law between A and B, whereby A will have the obligation to reimburse B the necessary and useful expenses incurred by B while managing the business of A. Okay, so that is the concept of a quasi-contract, specifically negotiorum gestio. And solutio indebiti naman, this takes place when something is received, when there is no right to demand it, and it was unduly delivered through mistake. The recipient has the duty to return it. Okay, so sa solutio indebiti naman, okay, so for example, in a store, si A yung cashier sa isang store and then si B, isang customer, bumili siya ng item doon sa sa store worth, say for example, 300 pesos. Okay, so binili niya, punta siya sa cashier, binayaran niya, and yung pera ni B is a 500 peso bill. So kung 300 pesos yung worth ng item na bilhin niya, so dapat may sukli siya na 200 pesos. But siguro si A, wala siya sa right mind niya noon, may problema siyang iniisip. So instead of just changing or giving a change of 200 pesos to B, ang nabigay niya is 300 pesos. So in that case, sobra yung sukli na binabigay niya. So in that case, if hindi isasauli ni B yung sobrang 100 pesos, in that case, si B would be unjustly enriched at the expense of A. Okay? So in that case, the law will impose now a quasi-contract of solutio indebiti between A and B, whereby B will be obliged to return the 100 pesos na sobra sa sukli niya. Okay, so that is uh, the quasi-contract. It is imposed by the law in order to prevent unjust enrichment uh, by a person. Okay, so yun ay ang yung obligation na i-return yung sobrang sukli, that is the civil obligation arising from contract. All right? So that is for quasi-contracts or civil obligations arising from quasi-contracts. Now let us go to um, civil obligations arising from criminal offenses. Under Article 1161, civil obligations arising from criminal offenses shall be governed by penal laws, subject to the provisions of Article 2177 and of the pertinent provisions of Chapter 2, Preliminary Title on Human Rights, and of Title 18 of this book, Regulating Damages. So, in short, they are civil obligations arising from delicts, or civil obligations arising from crimes, because okay, we have this civil obligation arising from crimes because of this article 100 of the revised penal code. Okay, every person criminally liable for a felony is also civilly liable. So that is under article 100 of the revised penal code. Say for example, if a person commits a crime of theft, okay, for example, he stole a cell phone in a certain department store. So, of course, if it will be proven beyond reasonable doubt na siya talaga yung nagnakaw, then may criminal liability siya. He can be imprisoned because of that crime he committed, because of the theft. And also, at the same time, he would have the civil liability of returning what he has stolen. Yung ninakaw niya, dapat niya isauli yun. Yun ang civil liability niya. Okay? So that is the essence of the civil liability arising from a crime. Okay? Next is civil liability arising from quasi-delicts or obligations. Under Article 1162, obligations derived from quasi-delicts shall be governed by the provisions of Chapter 2, Title 17 of this book, and by special law. If we say quasi-delicts, it is a fault or act of negligence which causes damages to another, there being no pre-existing contractual relations between the parties. So, yung mga disgrasya, causes of negligence, mga disgrasya because of negligence and imprudence. Although this civil obligation here is like overlaps with obligations arising from criminal offenses, because under our revised penal codes, reckless imprudence resulting to damage to property, or reckless imprudence resulting to multiple homicide, physical injuries, are criminalized. Okay, so it overlaps. It's like it could be considered as civil liability arising from quasi-delict. Okay. 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 For example, reckless imprudence resulting to damage to property. Okay. It could be that the civil obligation there can be considered as arising from delict because reckless imprudence resulting to damage to property is a crime under the revised penal code. It is criminally punishable. So, aside from the punishment, the criminal liability, the person who was reckless, which resulted to damage of property, also has to pay for the damage to the property. But it could also be considered as quasi-delict, that obligation to pay for the damaged property can be also considered as obligation arising from quasi-delict because it is from fault or act of negligence. So it overlaps. Okay, so that is for quasi-delicts. Okay, so we will end there. I hope you have learned something from the general provisions of obligations. So for the next topic would be the nature and uh, effects of obligations under chapter 2. Thank you.